Hello, my name is Ruth and I wanted to share some of my experiences of learning to overcome emetophobia and thrive, especially from the viewpoint of being a mum to a young child. A bit of background, I had suffered with emetophobia for as long as I can remember, and I'm now 45, so that was for quite a while. My emetophobia was no different from anybody else's, I guess. I had my rituals, my avoidance-seeking behaviours, my supposedly safe rules around food, travel, etc, etc. A list of things which I'm sure all emetophobes will recognise in some way, shape or form. But in a way, I had become used to it for myself. I knew it, I understood it, it was predictable, I didn't like it, it was exhausting, it stopped me from doing things, but those were consequences just for myself. However, things changed when we had our little boy almost 4 years ago. So I was now a mum, and all the emotions and experiences that brings arrived by the busload. And I love my little boy completely. I'd do anything for him. I just want him to grow up knowing that he's loved and safe and looked after and can do or be anything he wants. However, the reality was that a huge part of me was struggling, especially as he got into toddler age and was going to nursery, etc, etc. And I was now somehow trying to control his behaviour as well as my own, what he ate, where he went, just so that I could try and control whether he was, or more importantly, wasn't ill. And I knew this wasn't fair or even possible, really, in the long run. And I believe it's my job to be there for him whenever he needs me, and I couldn't be if he was sick. The first time he had a bug, I couldn't even be in the same room as him, and I'll never forget him shouting mummy and looking at me at the door, wondering why I wasn't running to give him a big cuddle and words of reassurance like I normally would if he was upset. My husband did a great job looking after him, but I still knew that I was confusing and upsetting him by staying away from him. So that's when I knew I really needed to try harder for him as well as me, not to pass on my fears and to step up and be the mum he needed, really. I'd previously worked through the Curia, Emetophobia and Thrive book by myself before we had him, and I'd watched a lot of Rob's videos, I'd watched testimonial videos, and I had made some progress. I understood the programme and I liked what it said. It seemed to totally understand what I did and thought. In fact, the first time I read through the book, some parts of it actually made me quite emotional, because for the first time ever somebody was saying exactly what I felt, and saying that other people felt exactly the same and just understood it and sort of didn't feel quite so alone with it. But the improvement was temporary. I did make some progress, but I seemed to be back to square one a year, 18 months later, which was just at the part when Brandon started becoming a little toddler. And I'm ashamed to say, part of me was scared of him because he represented a huge risk. And that sounds ridiculous to say now. And I am ashamed to have thought it of him, but that's the truth of it. So I contacted Victoria, a Thrive consultant, and I worked through the programme with her. And at first when I contacted her, I thought I'd come in towards the end, having already read the book and done the exercises myself. But she explained that no, we'd start right at the beginning again and work through it together, part by part. So for several months I worked through it with her, and there were times when I struggled, but I actually enjoyed the process. And one thing I really engaged with really early on with her was processing the positives. It did make me see and appreciate that in every day, every ordinary, boring, routine day, there were positives. You don't need to look for the big positives, you don't need to be doing anything special or go anywhere or do anything. These things are going on all the time. And focusing on these positives was the first thing that I found made a noticeable difference to the proportion of my time that I spent maintaining my phobia. When I first spoke to Victoria, I estimated that probably 90% of my thoughts and time were focused on worrying, brooding, seeking control, being anxious. And simply the time it took to recognise and process the positives meant that this time reduced as a result. Because I was doing this really for reasons focused around Brandon, my objectives for measuring my success were based around him. So as I started setting myself challenges to break some of my avoidance behaviours, he was an essential role to those. And one of my first ones was going on public transport with him. And just seeing the undiluted excitement and pleasure and fun on his little face from just getting on a bus with me and going on an adventure was enough to keep me positive and upbeat and relaxed enough to just enjoy the time with him and have fun. We only went to the next town and we played in the park and we had lunch at a cafe and we had a great time. And then, much to his amusement, because I'm not used to catching buses, we had to run to get it before it pulled off from the stop, which he thought was hilarious. But then a huge unplanned challenge arrived only a couple of weeks into going through the programme with Victoria. He had caught a bug and was ill in the middle of the night. And it was really hard work to keep calm enough to not run away this time. I didn't manage to be with him straight away, but after my husband had showered him, I gave him a cuddle and put him back to bed. And it was only a small difference, but I hadn't seen that confused look from him again, wondering why I wasn't looking after him. And asking Daddy, where was Mummy? So that was a positive to process, even though it was a blip, and it did worry me and it did set me back a little bit. But I learned to process the positives, and I noticed the huge change in that experience to when he'd previously been ill, and I was literally nowhere near him for a couple of days. One of the biggest things that resonated with me was that I didn't suffer with a random phobia. I had chosen to construct it. I'd often say I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, and yet I was choosing to maintain it for myself. I wasn't consciously doing it, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but as I talked it through with Victoria and realised that, I immediately felt more in control of overcoming it. So every time I had a blip or something wasn't going right, I knew something was in my power to change it because it was my power that had caused it. I had several small light bulb moments with Victoria. That was one of them. And another was that I found out I already had the ability and skills and resources to overcome my phobia. I thought I was going to be learning new skills and new approaches. However, in every other area of my life, I am able to apply objectivity, work through problems, face challenges, etc. I don't have high social anxiety. I don't worry what people think about me. I'm confident, have a happy family and home, run a successful business, etc., etc. So I learned that all the skills and resources and emotions that I applied to be that way were exactly the same ones that I could apply to overcoming my emetophobia. I didn't need to learn anything new. I just needed to learn to apply those skills. So it's now almost a year since I finished my sessions with Victoria. So an update on how I've been since then. The easiest way would be to say that I don't consider myself now as having emetophobia. I would say and acknowledge I am probably still a little bit more worried about it than your average person, but it doesn't control my life. I recognise and understand when I start unhelpful thinking, and I can quickly nip that in the bud and apply some sensible, rational thoughts and then crack on with my day. And I don't want that to sound blasé because it's not easy, and it hasn't always been a quick, easy process. Sometimes it could take a day, a few hours to get myself back on track. I likened it to being told to only write from now on with your opposite hand. So if you're right-handed like me and you try to write with your left hand, at first it's really difficult. You can't do it. You're thinking really hard about it and the results aren't great. But if you have to do it, the more you do it, the more comfortable and natural it begins to feel and the better the results. So 40 years of automatically thinking a certain way, certain things had become a habit for me. And like any habit, I had to focus and put in effort to break that habit. And I guess for a long while, it is still lurking in the background, ready to crop up again if you take the foot off the pedal and stop applying that focus and effort. But I now find I don't have to do quite as much work every day, and the work that I do is more natural and routine without it feeling like I'm battling to do the work. I still see the positives every day, live in the moment, and just enjoy happy times. We've had some occasions where Brandon has been ill and I've looked after him and not run away. And I now also understand, which was again was very important and a bit of a light bulb moment, was that it's normal to not enjoy the situation, and it's normal to react in some way. It's not pleasant, it's not nice, it's upsetting to see your child poorly. You spend all your time nursing, cleaning and washing, and general nice happy life gets put on hold for a little while they're poorly. But that's okay. I don't need to like it to be totally unaffected by it. The perfectionist in me thought that the opposite to being emetophobic was that I needed to be absolutely fine with it. And that's what I needed to achieve. And I wasn't achieving that because I never feel comfortable with it. It's not nice. I don't like it. But that's normal. And the difference is primarily before and after. So I don't spend every day worrying if it's going to happen and doing things to try and control that it doesn't. And when it does, when it's over, put it behind us and off we go. Brandon starts primary school in September, and before I did the programme, the thought of that created all kinds of fears and worries for me. I envisioned him being ill constantly, not being able to deal with it, not wanting him to go. Schools were really risky places, all those children together. But now I'm just as excited as he is to start big school. I can't wait for him to start. And we're enjoying all the preparations together, getting uniform and going on visits, and he's just really enjoying it, and it's lovely to enjoy it with him. So I would say to anyone struggling with emetophobia, especially if you see it tainting your experience as a mum, try the Thrive programme. We only get these little people for such a short amount of time, and you don't want to look back and regret how you've been, time you wasted, and I certainly didn't want to ever get to the stage where he told me I'd upset him, or worse still, even see him starting to take on my fears and become emetophobic himself. It will feel scary to start with. You'll be shining a spotlight on something you probably don't talk about, or may even openly acknowledge to anyone else. You'll feel uncomfortable and vulnerable and upset probably to start off with, but get through those barriers and I promise you, it's entirely possible to live without emetophobia running your life. I only wish I'd done it years ago. Good luck, everybody.